This is the CBS Evening News with Roger Mudd substituting for Walter Cronkite.
Good evening. The Secretary General of the United Nations, Kurt Waldheim, arrived in Tehran today. His visit is the highest level use yet of personal diplomacy to end the 59-day occupation of the U.S. Embassy. Bert Quint reports.
As the UN Secretary General was about to get his first look at revolutionary Iran, some of the defenders of the revolution were jostling reporters and photographers trying to get a look at the Secretary General. One soldier fired a shot in the air to stop the journalists who had been invited to Tehran's airport for Waldheim's arrival from getting near the UN chief. Eventually, the press was allowed into the VIP lounge. There, Waldheim, with Iran's foreign minister, Sadek Ghosbadeh, at his side, spoke in diplomatic terms. He told reporters that securing the release of what he called the personnel at the American embassy, not hostages or captives, but personnel, would not come quickly.
The personnel in the American embassy, it has the aspect of the grievances of the Iranian people. These are all very serious problems which have to be discussed, and hopefully the way can be paved for a solution.
His program, Waldheim said, has been prepared by the government, and other than a meeting with the foreign minister tomorrow, he doesn't know what it includes. He realizes that there is only one man here with the power to defuse the crisis, Ayatollah Khomeini, and Khomeini's aides have said the Ayatollah will not receive Waldheim personally. There is considerable resistance to overcome. Khomeini considers the UN a tool of the superpowers, and he made it sound like a favor allowing Waldheim to come, and then only as a fact finder, not as a mediator. The militants who hold the Americans captive are suspicious of Waldheim, and there seems to be an effort to turn Iranian public opinion against the Secretary General. Two of Iran's newspapers today ran pictures of Waldheim kissing the hand of the Shah's twin sister. One carries a caption saying this took place only last year at the height of the nation's struggle against the Shah, when Iranian freedom seekers sought vainly to meet the Secretary General. The militants at the embassy told another newspaper that the hostages will not be tried until they are sure the Shah will not be brought back to Iran. Then they said, we will get to the question of what form the trial should take. Bert Quint, CBS News, Tehran.
Don't wait for someday. Geritol is for now.
I used to think I was too young for Geritol, but not anymore.
I want to get as much out of life as I can. Don't you? So one thing I do to take care of myself is I take a Geritol tablet every morning to be sure I'm getting enough iron and vitamins.
Geritol, America's #1 iron and vitamin supplement with more than double the iron of any ordinary supplement. Don't wait for someday. Geritol is for now.
Geritol every day.
What could you do with $100,000? In the new Reader's Digest $500,000 sweepstakes, you could walk away with top money, $100,000. Over 53,000 other cash prizes. Watch the mail for your Reader's Digest sweepstakes letter, then send this entry back fast. The quicker you enter, the more you could be eligible to win. Top money, $100,000. But you can't win if you don't enter.
From all indications today, the fighting in Afghanistan between Soviet troops and Muslim insurgents is continuing and even getting heavier. In a related development, the Soviet newspaper Izvestia charged today that thousands of the insurgents were trained by the U.S.'s CIA at bases in Pakistan. The article charges that the United States, feeling the loss of influence in Iran, wanted to bring Afghanistan into its camp by supporting the rebels. And the article says this is the reason Soviet troops intervened. In Tehran, there were repercussions today from the Soviet activities in Afghanistan. Liz Trotta reports.
The sounds, the signs, and the angry crowds were familiar, but this time the target was different. Death to Russia, the demonstrators shouted. The people, most of them Afghanis living in Tehran, were protesting the Russian military push into Afghanistan, expressing a fear and mistrust of the Russians they have felt for years. Ayatollah Khomeini's armed militants stood guard around the Soviet compound, protecting it from attack. Throughout the morning, the crowds marched, at one point even stopping at the American embassy. Be it Russian or American, foreign interference was the butt of their criticism. The demonstration continued most of the day throughout Tehran, and by late afternoon, a small group of Afghanis were holding a sit-in at the Soviet embassy gates. Most of these men were Afghani mullahs, or religious men, and they said their prayers for the safety of their homeland. The Revolutionary Guard was reinforced, and many of them sat in cars, urging people to disperse. The mullahs said they had planned to stay at the gates for 10 months, but then a statement was read saying that Khomeini had asked them to leave. As dusk came, they packed their prayer rugs and slowly marched away, carrying their caricature of Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev. By dark, another demonstration began, and the message was repeated: death to America and to Russia. Liz Trotta, CBS News, Tehran.
Even though most analysts knew there were thousands of Soviet troops in Afghanistan, last week's coup d'etat caught most of them by surprise. Maybe it shouldn't have, because at least in hindsight, there were plenty of indications of what the Soviets were contemplating. In New Delhi, Bruce Dunning reports.
By all accounts, the Soviet takeover was meticulously planned and skillfully executed. But it has not been clear just how the Soviets were able to set up their coup without the Afghans realizing what they had in mind. Now, a member of a well-placed and influential Afghan family has fled to India, and because of his family's position, was able to give journalists the most detailed account so far. The first crucial move took place a week before Christmas. President Amin was living here at the center of Kabul in a former royal palace now called the People's House. The Russians persuaded Amin to move to an isolated hilltop palace on the outskirts of Kabul, not far from their embassy. Their excuse was that he would be safer there, well away from the city. But the move was intended to cut Amin off from contact with his government, and especially with Afghan army commanders. That gave the Russians a free hand as they began their massive airlift of men and equipment. The Russians also managed to lure Afghan guards away from key installations with promises of new equipment. The guards were then executed, the source said. On the night of the coup, the Russians moved a large force of armored vehicles, like the one still patrolling Kabul, out to the president's isolated palace. The Afghan defenders and the Russian attackers fought bitterly for almost 4 hours, and according to the Afghan source, casualties on both sides were heavy. The presidential palace was gutted. Amin was captured, given a quick midnight trial, and executed. Within 2 days, the source said, about 20,000 people were arrested, herded into makeshift jails. The new president, Karmal, has not been seen in public, but the source said Afghan army officers report seeing him and receiving orders from him, the most solid indication so far that Karmal is indeed in Kabul. This source also estimates that 40,000 Russian troops had been moved into the country by last weekend. The Soviets are moving units out to other parts of the country where there are reports of heavy fighting against the Soviet forces. Even in Kabul, which seems calm, there are reports of sporadic firefights and grenade explosions. And the Afghan source wistfully and proudly remarked that anti-Soviet Muslim guerrillas and anti-Soviet army units, both at home in the desolate Afghan mountains, will make it almost impossible for the Soviets to impose their will totally on the country. The Soviet move has thrown this part of the world into turmoil. Pakistan, which once saw Afghanistan as a buffer against the Soviet Union, is now terrified that it will be the next target for the Soviet troops. And India is desperately afraid that the United States will overreact and give massive amounts of military equipment to Pakistan, its longtime enemy. Bruce Dunning, CBS News, New Delhi.
Many people who escape from Afghanistan go to Iran, and events of the last few days have sent more on their way. When they reach Iran, they find thousands of countrymen and official support for their views. Randy Daniels has this report.
For years, there has been a sizable Afghan community in Iran, many of them illegal laborers. Thousands have been sent back, but since Ayatollah Khomeini came to power, nearly 60,000 Afghans have been declared political refugees. When they come to Iran, the refugees are registered by a local Afghan committee, which attempts to meet their basic needs. A committee member, Abdullah Akbari, denounced the Soviet invasion of his country, calling the new regime in Kabul the latest servant of the Russians. Faisal Ahmad arrived in Tayyabad near the Iranian border today from western Afghanistan. He said Soviet tanks and soldiers moved into the town of Herat 3 days ago, meeting only slight resistance from anti-government guerrillas. Ahmad said the Russians have blocked main roads with tanks and closed Afghanistan's borders to foreigners. Many of the exiles here would like to see an Islamic government in Afghanistan similar to the one which now rules Iran, hoping that a revival of traditional Islamic fervor will end the cycle of political chaos and bloodshed which have come to characterize Afghanistan. Randy Daniels, CBS News, Tayyibad, Iran.
In western Iran, resistance to the Ayatollah remains firm in two important regions. There was more fighting today in a major Kurdish city, Sanandaj, between rebels and the Ayatollah's Revolutionary Guards. In Tabriz, anti-government feeling is picking up more steam every day, despite the government's attempts to make peace. Doug Tennell has this report.
The government's attempts to suppress dissent in Tabriz appear to have only solidified support for the most militant anti-government activists in this provincial capital. Brandishing knives and clubs, the crowds gather daily at the offices of the Muslim People's Republic Party here to shout their support for the gunmen inside. Instead of yielding to a wave of arrests of MPRP officials, the Turkish-speaking Azerbaijanis took government security men prisoner. At least 9 of Ayatollah Khomeini's Revolutionary Guards are held captive inside, in open defiance of the central government in Tehran. The demonstrators pledged their support not to Khomeini, but to the dissident Ayatollah in Qom, Shariat Madari. They shout death to Medini and Moghravi, the central government's representatives in Azerbaijan. The rallies in the soccer stadium across town are the government's attempts to boost morale among its Revolutionary Guardsmen and the loyal student cadre in Tabriz. In Azerbaijan, they are the minority, surrounded by many for whom the luster of Khomeini's Islamic Republic has already dimmed. And when the two groups meet in the streets now, there is frequently violence. At least 8 have died in the clashes in the last month. The gunmen of the Muslim People's Republic Party in Tabriz have even defied an order from Shariat Madari himself to set their hostages from the government in Tehran free. Doug Tennell, CBS News, Tabriz.
In the world of Amway, this could be you.
You know, we never had the money to feel really independent until we discovered Amway. Started part-time.
We're earning extra income as Amway distributors, bringing others into it.
We run it. We're our own boss.
And being more independent is the best security.
When someone wants to tell you about Amway, listen and get the whole story.
With the world of Amway, you can do it too. Maxwell House's coffee to relax with. Maxwell House's
good coffee.
Maxwell House's
good show.
Good to the last drop. Maxwell House.
There's nothing like relaxing with a cup of Maxwell House coffee. Coffee you can count on. Always good to the last drop.
Maxwell House's
a good ending.
Good to the last drop. Maxwell House.
Police detained about 100 people in Reno, Nevada last night after thousands of celebrants streamed from the casinos and rampaged for 3 hours, smashing store windows and stoning policemen. Several persons were injured. Police used tear gas to break up the mob. They estimated about 4,000 revelers took part in the violence, throwing rocks, bottles, and anything they could get their hands on. Police said some of the rioters chanted anti-Iranian obscenities and carried placards, but they characterized that as more of an afterthought. In Chapay, Quebec, early today, fire swept through a social club, killing 42 persons at a New Year's Eve party and injuring more than 40 more. We have a report narrated by Jan Tennant of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
The injured were taken to Quebec City for treatment. Many of them were badly burned. An estimated 350 people packed the reception hall in the mining community of Chapay for a New Year's Eve party. An hour and a half into the new year, fir branches that had decorated the reception hall burst into flames. Witnesses say one partier had been showing off a cigarette lighter just before the fire started. When the blaze broke out, the crowd panicked, say Quebec police spokesman. A crush of people jammed the rear exit doors of the hall, but the fire spread quickly through the building. Firemen were on the scene almost immediately, but they were unable to control the blaze until nearly 5 hours later. Fire officials say they want to interview as many survivors as possible to find out just what happened.
Alcohol is about as big a part of the traditional New Year's celebration as paper hats and bowl games, but authorities estimate it's also involved in about 50% of all traffic fatalities. The state of Washington opened the new decade with a tough new law aimed at reducing that statistic. Harold Dow reports.
There were only a few minutes left in 1979 when Washington State Police were called to a one-car accident just south of Seattle. Incredibly, the driver wasn't hurt when his car sheared off a power pole. Troopers suspected the driver was under the influence of alcohol.
On the line, just stay on the line and walk straight as you can. Don't heel at all.
The driver was given a roadside check, then arrested for drunk driving. He refused to take a breath test and, as a consequence, will automatically lose his license for 6 months. Under the new law, if he had been convicted as a first offender, he would have gotten a mandatory 24-hour jail sentence, a fine of up to $500, a 30-day license suspension, and would have to attend rehabilitation class. The standard in Washington and in a growing number of other states is 0.1% blood alcohol. That's 3 to 4 beers or drinks consumed in an hour for a 100-pound person, 6 for someone who weighs 190. The stiff new penalties are what make this new law unique. The police here, as in most of the country, say they're handling an increasing number of alcohol-related accidents.
When you consider that we kill approximately 50,000 people a year on the nation's highways, and about half of them because of irresponsible use of intoxicants, we really aren't measuring up to our responsibility. I think it's time that we as individuals did that in this country.
It is perhaps fitting that this new law is getting its first test on what is traditionally the busiest night of the year for the Highway Patrol.
There were about 18,000 drunk driving arrests in Washington last year, with a conviction rate of near 90%. High because the breathalyzer test is enough for a conviction here. Facilities already are crowded in Washington, but officials say if the new drunk driving law works, they may not need the extra jail space. The hope is the law itself will have a sobering effect on the people who drink and then try to drive. Harold Dow, CBS News, Renton, Washington.
A surprising message to Rolaids users. Tums neutralizes 1/3 more acid than Rolaids. Watch this familiar demonstration. 1 Rolaids and 1 Tums tablet are added to stomach acid. Both neutralize the acid. But on those occasions, when your stomach has even this much more excess acid, Tums can still absorb it. Rolaids can't, because tablet for tablet, Tums neutralizes 1/3 more acid than Rolaids. For acid indigestion and heartburn, take Tums.
Thursday the 1st, 7:30 a.m. Man in mirror looks old. Gray hair has got to go. Used Grecian formula for the first time. Looks like water. No mess. Tuesday the 6th, gray hair slowly disappearing. Monday the 12th, more gray gone. Nobody noticing. Sunday the 18th, hair looks perfectly natural. Feels healthy too. Wife likes touch of gray I left around the sides. Boss says I look great. Asks if I've lost weight. Fact, without all that gray, I look like myself again. Grecian formula, liquid and cream.
Rhodesian police today killed 7 black guerrillas who had attacked a farm north of Salisbury. It was the first major incident of the ceasefire, now in its 4th day. Under terms of the peace plan, the guerrillas have 3 more days to report to assembly points around the country, and they appear to be complying. Robin Wright has this report.
In several areas across the country, large groups of Patriotic Front guerrillas turn themselves in, joining the Commonwealth effort to end Rhodesia's 7-year-old war. By the end of the day, British officials said 2,100 had reported and hundreds more were close to rendezvous points. At Murewa, they came in fully armed, some 70 men and boys who had been in the area for 3 days, checking out the ceasefire point to make sure it wasn't a trap. Suspicion is the biggest obstacle to the ceasefire. At Dendera, more than 850 have come in within the past 24 hours, and today they received a special welcome. Lord Solms, the British governor, made a surprise visit to the ceasefire zone just 6 miles from the volatile Mozambique border. The turnout today is the first encouraging sign that Rhodesia's ceasefire, one of the most unusual operations in the world, is actually going to end the hostilities. Robin Wright, CBS News, Salisbury.
More than 100,000 British steelworkers who are demanding a 20% pay raise are going on strike tonight. It's the first time since 1926 that a strike has shut down the state-owned industry. The strike could be the most dangerous threat faced by Margaret Thatcher in the 8 months since she's been Prime Minister.
This is what you should be having for breakfast tomorrow morning. It's Kellogg's Most, and it's different than any nutritional cereal you can buy. Kellogg's Most cereal contains a multivitamin and iron supplement, the goodness of wheat germ, and the high fiber of bran, all woven into a combination of ingredients no other cereal offers. And a crunchy wheat taste. Delicious. With all that going for you, why settle for less than Most?
To climb the mast at sea takes a taste for the robust. Judith Lawson found that out when she set out to sail the world alone. Nescafe set out to win the world with a coffee that's more than rich, it's robust. The robust flavor that helped make Nescafe the world's largest selling brand of instant coffees. Nescafe, regular and decaffeinated. Robust flavor that won the world.
The former ruler most in the limelight right now is, of course, the Shah of Iran, but he represents just one of dozens of regimes that came to an end during 1979. Morley Safer has that story.
There can be nothing more poignant for a king of kings than saying farewell in this way. He left behind a peacock throne with all the trimmings, and just about the last sound he heard was the Tehran mob howling for his blood. Like the Shah, Anastasio Somoza was raised to one day take over the family country. He did, and like the Shah, 1979 was the year it was taken away. Citizen Somoza resides quietly in Paraguay and occasionally at sea, one of this year's yacht people. Some passages were less traumatic. Canada lost a Trudeau and gained a Clark, then lost a Clark and might regain a Trudeau or a Clark, depends. Britain lost a Callahan, gained a Thatcher, exchanged a jolly Uncle Jim for an iron Auntie Maggie. News from Belgium, it's fair to say, was overshadowed by other events, so you may not have noticed that Mr. Boynant's caretaker government gave way to Mr. Martin's coalition in yet another centuries-old dust-up between Flamands and Walloons. Sweden moved quietly to the right. The people's choice was not Ulla Ulston, but Thorbjorn Faldin, described as a laconic sheep farmer. Some consider Faldin the quietest man in Sweden, which is saying a lot. Moving north, the big news in Helsinki was the rejection of Kalevi Sorsa's left-of-center policies in favor of Mauno Koivista's left-of-center policies. There was no rioting in Finland. It came as no surprise when Brazilians replaced General Ernesto Geisel with General Figueiredo. General Figueiredo was General Geisel's personal choice. Bolivia was concerned about its image, and in August, the military junta allowed free elections, and Mr. Guevara was elected. But in November, the junta lost interest in image, and Colonel Natush Bush took Bolivia back. 2 weeks later, however, Senor Aguirre, a civilian, took Bolivia from Colonel Natush Bush. Stay tuned. Portugal changed leaders, so did Turkey, and Ireland, Iraq, Ecuador, Chad, Mauritania, Italy, the Congo, Luxembourg. In Cambodia, it's unclear who is in charge. Some leaders were removed by natural causes. In Algeria, President Boumediene died of a rare blood disease, and President Benjedid was elected in a landslide, there being no one opposing him. President Neto of Angola was taken by cancer in a Moscow hospital. This poet of protest was replaced by President Eduardo dos Santos. President Turaki of Afghanistan resigned, we were told because of ill health. That may have been a gunshot wound or a seizure while the palace was under siege, led by his successor, President Amin, not to be confused with the other Amin. Then Amin, just under the wire for 1979, was taken out and shot by his successor, President Karmal. The departure of President Park of South Korea came at dinner. Shot dead by the head of the KCIA, Kim Jae-kyu, then replaced as president by Chae Kyu-ha. Ali Bhutto was relieved as Prime Minister of Pakistan in 1977. But it was in 1979 that his successor, General Muhammad Zia, had him hanged, ensuring no further opposition. India started '79 with Mr. Desai, who told the world that he drank his own urine. It did nothing for his political longevity. He was replaced by Mr. Singh in July. The Caribbean isle of Grenada took advantage of the absence of its Prime Minister, Eric Gary, off in New York talking about UFOs, to replace him with his former best friend, Maurice Bishop. Grenada is not asking for Mr. Gary to be returned. South Africa changed quietly after a very noisy public scandal. Zimbabwe, or Rhodesia, is in transition, and Nigeria quietly changed from a military to a civilian government. Otherwise, Africa was messy. They took out Ghana's leader, General Akufo, and shot him. In Equatorial Guinea, President Massier was ousted by his nephew, Guema, and among his first acts was the execution of his uncle. Emperor Bokassa I of the Central African Republic escaped by the skin of his teeth when his cousin David took over the government. Emperor Bokassa's 1977 coronation was worth millions to French merchants, but when he needed a friend in France last year, they wouldn't let him in the country. He now lives quietly in the Ivory Coast. And there was Idi Amin. Amin's departure was a blessing for the people of Uganda, but it was a loss to international journalism. We don't have Idi to kick around anymore, but you never know. He's lying low in Libya or Iraq or somewhere, waiting no doubt to make a comeback. 1979 was not a vintage year for high office. It was a year to make anyone who might hunger for political acclaim go quietly to bed until the fever passes. Morley Safer, CBS News, New York.
That's the CBS Evening News this Tuesday. I'm Roger Mudd. Good night.
Listen to the Dermers, winners of $100,000 from Publishers Clearinghouse.
We used to worry about how to send our kids to college.
Now we're $100,000 richer. When they're ready, they can have the best.
You may be lucky too. Watch your mail for the new Clearinghouse Triple Sweepstakes. 3 great giveaways with 3 grand prizes, 3 full sets of prizes, homes, cars, cash, only from Publishers Clearinghouse. So open this letter and enter now.
Denture wearers, you have a powerful enemy. The bacterial film called plaque, which can cause denture stains. But you have an even more powerful friend, Mint Denture Cream. Denture Cream has a special formula for cleaning dentures with 3 powerful ingredients to help brush away bacterial plaque and the stains it can cause, leaving your dentures fresh and clean. Yes, plaque is a powerful enemy, but Mint Denture Cream is more powerful than plaque.
This has been the CBS Evening News with Roger Mudd substituting for Walter Cronkite.
I'm Bob Schieffer. It's still well before dawn in this country when many of each day's developments are unfolding in Iran. We'll bring you up to date here on Wednesday morning.
This is CBS.
Violence brings in the new year here in Nashville. That story and more coming up.
One way to brighten the new year is